think Seattle, this is kind of old school NFL, right? Like, it's all about territory, it's all about defense.
So hello, welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news, views, and overreactions to all things NFL. The Super Bowl is in the books. You can crown your new king. Cacaw? So hey, we got Connor here, and we got Ronan.
Yeah, so I probably would, try and do the Seahawks noise, but I believe that's just like incredibly high, incoherent noise the 12s are known for, so that may not be the most appropriate podcast material for those who are listening.
Hey, look, everyone who comes to get our Super Bowl review, all they want to do is hear grating noises in their ears. Otherwise, why would they be here? Like, that's all they want.
You know,
how's fixes yourself?
Is it you or us that currently have the record for the loudest noise, loudest home noise?
Oh, it's us, and you're not getting it back because I don't think they're doing it anymore.
Yeah,
we had it for years. You guys took it back, then we took it back again.
So anyway, like huge amount of noise, probably not best. But anyway, I'm doing great. Obviously, big win for my team, winning the Super Bowl, getting revenge over Super Bowl 49 was nice, albeit in much less exciting fashion. And it's hard not to be unhappy about everything that transpired over the weekend to do with that. But yeah, other than that, pretty quiet, kind of ramping up some stuff at work, so we'll see how that goes. But happy days with the Seahawks as Super Bowl champions.
Many people said that there's no connective tissue between these teams anymore. I don't know, because I think they learnt their lesson and they ran the damn ball. That would be my takeaway. But we will come on to discussing the Super Bowl in its entirety a little bit later on. We've just got a few little bits of news to get out of in front of that. So I suppose we'll just kind of go through. We had our kind of end of year awards that went out. So I don't think there's anything overly surprising in here, but we can kind of go through them and see. So MVP went to LA Rams quarterback Matt Stafford. It was a very closely ran race between himself and Drake May. I think we can safely say, following the postseason, that it doesn't seem like it should have been quite so close a race, given how the pair of them performed at that stage. There is a more generalized point I would make here, which is they need to maybe reassess who's getting to vote in these things, because some of the votes were a little bit crazy, particularly in a race that ended up this close. Like, someone had Justin Herbert as their number one choice for quarterback, justifying it by saying if you put him behind someone else's line, he'd be great. And I was like, that's a lovely hypothetical award you're coming up with right now. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I think, like, for me overall, the Matt Stafford one made sense. I thought from kind of about week 10 onwards, it was looking like it was going this way. He had that fantastic run of, was it 7 games without an interception and a minimum of 2 touchdowns a game, averaging like 3 touchdowns a game or something like that. He had an incredible streak down the middle of it. Yeah,
I think it's safe to say that he was probably the best quarterback this year in terms of the level of play that he was at. Like, obviously, they didn't end up winning the division, but they were obviously in the toughest division in football, so you kind of take a bit of discount for that. But in terms of just like pure quarterback play, and obviously the what you have to do as a quarterback was quite different over the last couple of years, given the defensive evolution that we've seen. I think you can't really run any better than Matt Stafford, and obviously the Seattle defense is one of the best in the league. It's only really bad games down the back half of the season certainly were against Matt Stafford. So yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't vote for him. And obviously someone who's at the back end of their career, giving them one last MVP, kind of buffering the very likely first ballot Hall of Fame case. Since I assume no one hates Matt Stafford, he will probably actually get that. Seems very legitimate, and it's some compensation for the fact that obviously a division rival and getting the Super Bowl. But it's something.
Yeah, like look, he led the NFL in passing yards at over 4,700. He led in touchdowns 46, touchdown to interception ratio of 5.8. Like, it was very good. Yeah.
On the voting thing, I'm also like, they've opened it up so they actually publish all the votes, and it's now ranked choice voting. And I think both of those have been generally improvements in the process. And I think the fact that we know there's one fella who's like, oh, Justin Herbert, look what he did in such tough circumstances, it's fine. Like, that's the whole point of it. Like, rank choice kind of will reduce that being probably your problem. And, you don't expect 50 people to agree necessarily, except when it is like Miles Garrett or something.
Oh, of course,
like
of course. Like, I don't expect 50 to
so
agree. I don't
it's
expect
fine.
anyone to be picking Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Like, look at his season. Like,
Yeah.
I,
So
I,
I don't know how they select the people who end up on the NFL honors voting pool or however it
it's
works.
Associated Press, I believe. I think
Yeah.
it's they
So
get it, and now they've expanded it to allow one or two NFL media members to vote as well. But yeah,
so if you want accountability, then whatever mechanism there is to add and remove people to that pool is probably the better way to deal with that.
yeah, like it's not quite as bad as we had a discussion already about the Hall of Fame stuff and how they definitely need to change their pool. But yeah, I'd keep an eye on it, particularly now that it's all visible. Next up, we had Defensive Player of the Year. Or sorry, no, we did Offensive Player of the Year. We'll go with here
It's
first.
easy to forget because obviously OPOY is obviously
Yeah, it's
the
the
poor cousin
non-quarterback
of the
award.
MVP. But yeah, like it usually goes to the best skill player. That's kind of become the normative thing, and JSN gets it, and that's very legitimate since has had an amazing season as an offensive player. Like there were other people you could consider, like Puka Nakua, CMC, Bijan Robinson, but I think JSN for having a spike year, being above expectations and kind of
Yeah,
being
yeah.
the kind of focal point of an entire passing attack, and obviously in a team that ended up doing really well. I think that made sense from the honor someone from the Seahawks in this
No, of
case.
course, over 17, nearly 1,800 yards. He was at one point tracking to get over the 2K mark and maybe set the record, but obviously the passing attack slowed down a little bit in the back half of the season for the Seattle Seahawks. So not that it really matters, we're here in their championship game, but yeah, like I think a deserving winner. He had less touchdowns than I thought he was going to get, but I suppose you had a lot of running back touchdowns this year, so like that makes sense to me. Defender of the year, this was kind of a foregone conclusion, right? Miles Garrett, like broke the single sack record,
Yeah.
albeit that he had to hang around for 4 games trying to do it nearly. Like it was very impressive.
I think the only interesting hypothetical for me is like obviously given the pace that he was on and obviously things slowed down at the end, like what is the hypothetical amount of sacks he could have got that they would actually have made him MVP?
Yeah,
I think maybe 25. I think if he got to 25, they probably would have had to make him MVP. Like I
yeah.
think JJ Watt's the last time that people even considered it a conversation. And I think the people after JJ Watt didn't get it, people just kind of go, it's never going to happen. But I would think there is some level I imagine of sack breaking record, like a sack record that we go, okay, we'll give you the MVP, fine.
Yeah,
You're
you'd
like
have to
Lawrence
break it by
Taylor
a
style.
few, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah,
but like, the thing is as well, like it's also just there's the additional impressiveness of he's doing it on a team that is terrible, so isn't in as many
yeah,
pass
yeah, yeah.
rush situations as you would have if you're a team. Essentially, for those who don't understand, like if you're on a team that is playing with the lead more often, the other team have to pass the ball more, and it gives you more pass rushing opportunities, whereas you can just kind of like slow down and eat the clock against the Browns.
I
And
think
then they also don't have a huge amount of additional players on that. Like, it's a decent defense, but it's like he's still the focal point, so he's getting double teams, and we saw the last couple of weeks was just teams trying to not let him get that sack against them.
Yeah, and he was just like, to be fair, he was also playing into it because he was playing very wide. I felt like I think he was playing in a way it was too obvious and he wasn't moving around. But anyway, like I think it's just interesting hypothetically to think about like what are the kind of de facto barriers you have in mind for a non-quarterback to win MVP? Like it's probably at least 2,000 yards for a skill position player, I imagine.
Yeah.
And for a defensive lineman, it's probably 25 sacks probably, and for a DB, it's probably like I don't know, like 10 interceptions. Like like it's just obviously so unlikely that any of those things will ever happen that we know how it's going to be. But it's interesting to just think about it. Anyway, on to the rookie awards.
Into the rookie awards, we have the Carolina Panthers finding a bright spot here. Ted McMillan wins the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Uh, like he said that he considered it not his best year, that he considered it fairly middle of the road. He had 70 catches on 122 targets for just over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So obviously led all the rookies in yards. Obviously set a franchise record for yardage as a rookie and all that kind of stuff. He was getting a lot of explosive plays. It was impressive, particularly given again he was on a less good team. Bryce Young definitely came on leaps and strides, and the team was better than it has been, but he was a bright spot for him. I think there was a few other contenders for this earlier on, like Emeka Ibuka and things like that earlier on in the season were looking good, but they didn't kind of finish out quite as strong, whereas Chet seemed to be quite consistent, and I think maybe that's what got him over the line here.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. Like, I think Ibuka obviously had an amazing start to the year and then completely tailed off, whereas Ted was up and down throughout the season, but kind of if you average it out through any like quarter of the season, whatever, it was fine. The quarterback, no rookie quarterback, obviously kind of played throughout the entire year. Like, obviously we saw some good play from Jackson Dart, from Tyler Shook, and I think they got a couple of votes because of that. But unless you're going to go all out and kind of go, okay, Gray Zabel, the amazing interior offensive lineman of the Seahawks, should get the offensive rookie of the year, which basically will never happen.
Yeah.
Then it's going to go to Ted, who I think, objectively, I think was probably the best person to get this.
Yeah, and we're doubling back to the Cleveland Browns for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So Carson Swessinger, their linebacker. Obviously, look, all the focus is going to be on Garrett on that defense. God, you'd almost think it should be a priority for them to keep their defensive coordinator, given he coached up Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. I'm sure they managed that.
They thought the problem is they screwed it up so much that James Schwartz thought he would get the job, and then they didn't give him the job. Like, if they had hired Todd Monken like at a normal, like within a normal period of time, he might have accepted it. But I think the fact that they waited so long,
it was, and then because he's essentially sitting out this year now from the side of things, so he'll probably do some consulting or something like that. But
Carson Schwarzenegger had a good season. Like some of the other competition here would probably be Nick Monwari, who kind of came on very strong for the Seattle defense later on, and James Pierce, but probably good that James Pierce didn't get this.
We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, but impressive from the young fella. He was, I think, second round pick, if I remember correctly. He led the rookies in tackles. He also, it's a lesser spoken about thing, but he got the green dot for the defense, so he was serving as a signal caller for them, which is not really. I believe the Seahawks had a similar setup, but it's not normally a thing that you see a rookie, particularly a second round rookie, coming in and being the guy who's getting the calls in and positioning the defense and so on. So that's very impressive. So I think it speaks to a lot of leadership quality as well, which is good to see.
I think there's still love for that kind of classic linebacker, like these days that'd be like Bobby Wagner or Luke Kuechly, who just went to the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. In a second, or going back, guys like Ray Lewis or people. Like those kind of famous defenses from like the Steelers and the Bears, 85 Bears, all had like those kind of enforcer type guys. And while obviously the game changed
Brian
a lot,
Urlacher always comes to mind for that kind of one.
Like those type of guys, they don't exist in the same way anymore because the NFL changed so much. But I think there's still in the kind of romantic eye of what the NFL should be, that guy who controls the middle of the field is still very much in the voters' imagination.
Yeah. Our head coach of the year was Mike Vrabel, who obviously took New England to the precipice. Didn't quite get them over the line there, but I think that makes a lot of sense. He had a great season. Everything seemed to work quite well for them. It was an incredibly quick turnaround. It's a good story and narrative as well. Seems to overall be a good guy. Has a good culture there. Everyone seems to like him. Like, it just kind of it tracks a lot. I think there was a good bit of competition for this position, or for this competition, but Vrabel makes sense. Particularly last week, we kind of heard some of our preseason takes on it. Sean had him picked for his coach of the year. I think I said it was 50-50 between himself and Ben Johnson for it. And I think Ben Johnson did very well as well, but I think the Mike Vrabel one was maybe more surprising to people as well. I think no one was really expecting, particularly not a Super Bowl appearance out of him at this stage. And given how bad they looked last year, the turnaround kind of brings an even starker contrast.
Yeah, I think this is probably the award that basically is a proxy for wins over expected, right? It's like basically which coach won more games than you expected in like week zero, effectively, and obviously a vibe thing as well, that they kind of reform, and obviously that basically will very much be in favor of teams who are coming in their first or second year, and which are taking teams which were previously in the toilet. And obviously in both cases New England fit those criteria, and obviously taking them to the Super Bowl, which wouldn't have been known at the time. I think these votes are made in like week 18 if I recall correctly, but obviously an amazing achievement to get that, and that's kind of reset the thing. And while they didn't win the Super Bowl, I think there's still a lot of positive things ahead for them, but I think wrote a magical season to this. But there's lots of other people you could have given this to, as I said, like Ben Johnson, whatever like that, but I think Vrabel is certainly as worthy as they would have been.
Yeah, our comeback player of the year was running back Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, like he was hugely important to his team. He was gone most of last season, getting like experimental surgery in Germany on his calves. He did kind of absorb the life force of half of his teammates to be able to stay on the field this year. Uh, I will say, like, look, it's impressive he came back. It's impressive the workload he took. He was not the same player this year. Like you could see the yards per carry are down, the yards per route are down. It wasn't phenomenal, but there wasn't a ton of other options here. You had like Aiden Hutchinson, maybe like a Trevor Lawrence, maybe even a Stephon Diggs, albeit it was later in the season that he kind of came on in that stuff. I would have loved a bit of crack for like Philip Rivers to to get a look in. Like if there's a comeback, it's coming back after 5 years of being on the couch and coaching high school ball. But I'm
I think
fine with this.
they tightened the criteria around this a couple of years ago, I believe, to be just about injuries effectively. So I think it basically is now you came off some degree of injury effectively to be
Okay.
eligible for this, rather than the more vague coming back from poor form or that type of stuff, or off the couch as you say. So I do
Yeah.
think now it does have to be basically the most injured player who came back type award.
Although no, there's like Philip Rivers got a vote in this, so like they're not letting you do it. He had
Yeah,
one
but I
first
think
place
the
vote.
criteria that, like, it's like the judge's guide is supposed to
Yeah.
orientate towards the CMC type comeback.
Fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, so look, it's fine. It's not necessarily he's going to be back to the top of his game. We also had our Hall of Fame inductees, so I'll run through these quickly. We had quarterback Drew Brees, wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, linebacker Luke Kuechly, kicker Adam Vinatieri, and running back Roger Craig. It's weird being at the stage where like guys who I watched most of the careers slash all of the careers of are going into the Hall of Fame, but like I don't think there's anything too controversial in any of these. Like Drew Brees, love him or hate him, has the pelts on the wall. Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, two-time Offensive Player of the Year, four-time second team All Pro, one first team All Pro, 13 Pro Bowls, led the NFL in passing 7 different years and all this kind of stuff. Like he's got the numbers for sure, and obviously he was involved in some of the bigger storyline ones like that New Orleans Super Bowl run coming post Katrina and everything. So like I think he ticks all the boxes. Larry Fitzgerald also like excellent throughout his career. Luke Kuechly, maybe there was question marks just because of the shortness of his career. But he
Well,
was
that's why he didn't go in first ballot, because I think
yeah
everyone accepted he was the best linebacker at the, like, obviously some Seattle fans would say Bobby Wagner, but I think the consensus was generally like Hugh Kickley was an elite linebacker, like someone who defined the position for nearly a decade, but he did, as I said, retire early. And Vinatieri, I think he was eventually going to get a Vinatieri because obviously he's so iconic. As I always say, it's like it's the Hall of Fame, right? Like not the Hall of footballing excellence per se. Those things are
yeah
highly correlated, but they're not the same. I think the players who define the era are as important to kind of put in here as people who are necessarily just like the stat patterns or whatever like that.
yeah
I think Vinatieri, look, you can put whatever opinion you want on kicking, but Vinatieri, you can't write the history of the NFL throughout the 2000s and 2010s without Vinatieri in there. And Roger
yeah.
Craig, I believe, is the senior.
He's the
Uh,
senior addition, yeah. So he
yeah,
played. He's what about 60? He's in his 60s now anyway. But he played for 49ers, Raiders, and Vikings back in the day. 4 Pro Bowls, 3 Super Bowls with the 49ers. He was the first NFL player to have 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season, which is kind of a cool thing to have back then. But he was pretty top of his game back then. He had an All Pro, a second team All Pro, one Offensive Player of the Year, obviously three-time Super Bowl champion, a couple of Pro Bowls. He was in an all decades team and stuff. So like yeah, like very much to be expected. Although I believe that the problem is basically there's a glut of guys with a lot of the qualifications, and there is a timeline for them getting in, so that's where some of the tightness on the senior ones came in. So they kind of added the additional spots for them, but also it means that there's still a backlog there. But yeah, so a very
yeah.
worthy Hall of Fame group. I'm sure no one was overlooked at all, right?
Well, look, Bill Belichick should be a Hall of Famer this year. I believe there was a report that already came out this week, basically saying that they're going to change the process again, kind of reduce the number of people who are involved in the selection
Yeah,
process, involving more NFL historians and general managers instead of media members. reducing the number of kind of shortlist candidates from 15 to a smaller amount. So I think that he will definitely be in the Hall of Fame next year. You can probably take that to the bank if you're so inclined. But I definitely think there will be a change to the process there. And remember, the Hall of Fame is basically an independent entity. It's not like the NFL controls it, so there is a little bit of awareness there. But the pressure will be applied here to make sure nothing like that happens again. But look, Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald were both iconic for their respective franchises. Obviously, Drew Brees technically briefly with the Chargers, but Drew Brees, obviously not just a great quarterback, you say, in terms of the pelts and the statistics and the breaking all of the records, but obviously someone intimately associated with obviously one of the most historic Super Bowl wins for New Orleans Saints team that has historically been a complete joke, and winning it, in just briefly after Hurricane Katrina had ruined New Orleans. So there's just obviously just so much there that he was, if they're the first ballot guaranteed type thing, if there is a guaranteed. And Larry Fitzgerald, obviously kind of one of those kind of good soldiers for Arizona for so many years, and obviously came this close to getting the Super Bowl, but certainly wasn't at fault for what happened there. And it's completely excellent for that period, and Vinatieri, an iconic player. So yeah. Altogether a great class. And the only issue is just how do you keep fitting in these good players going forward, because it's not like the ones coming down the line are going to be less worthy.
Yeah. Going from a bunch of good guys to probably not a very good guy. Crime Punishment, what are they doing? Yep, it's felonies. Atlanta's James Pierce Jr. has been arrested on counts of aggravated battery, aggravated stalking, and resisting arrest. Reports outlying kind of a domestic dispute. I believe his partner was trying to end the relationship with him. He did not take it very well. She went to leave. He tried to open the door of her car, and she tried to drive away, so then he drove into her. Then he tried to flee arrest and so on, then resisted arrest. Basically reports of domestic abuse potentially as well, and it's all a horrendous mess. But he's up on multiple felonies and a couple of misdemeanors, and does not look very promising for him at all. He was obviously, they drafted a Piney this year in Atlanta. They were planning to build large sections of their game plan around him, and this happened. So it's not really much to say apart from this guy sounds like a piece of shit.
Yeah, this seems to be a case study in somehow making things worse again and again and again after doing something incredibly stupid. And obviously deciding to attack someone, and someone who has a public profile themselves as a professional basketball player certainly doesn't help in any case, and she's already been quite public in saying that he's a piece of shit basically. And and then kind of doubling down and basically not cooperating with the police.
Took a swing at them apparently.
Yeah, it's not going to make any more friends in the courtroom, I imagine. So yeah, he's probably in a lot of trouble. Now this is it's probably, I don't know where this would land, but there's a good chance his career's over. I wouldn't guarantee it, but it's going to be tough for him to make his way back from here.
Yeah.
And as you say, this is a team that the Atlanta invested a first round pick in, and who was looked to have a very promising career ahead of them. So
as you said, I think had some votes for the
he had 10.5 sacks as a rookie. So that is that's a fairly impressive line. Just to have thrown that all away, just foolish, I suppose. So.
And on that lovely cheerful note, Ronan, let's go and look at the Super Bowl. So obviously Super Bowl was Seattle at New England were the home team, right? At New England at Santa Clara, 29-13. This was kind of one for the purists is maybe the best way to describe it. I can tell you that the vast majority of my conversations with the more casual NFL fans they come over to chat to me about it and just go oh, that was a bit shit, wasn't it? And I was well, there's interesting defensive things, but even if you're big into them, at a certain point you also want other things to be happening. Seattle just absolutely suffocated New England in this game, and New England's defense played very well, but equally I don't think the Seattle offense was playing fantastically in this one either. So it ended up being kind of a slow, almost attritional kind of walk towards the end for them. So yeah, this was 9-0 at halftime. It was 12-0 at the end of the third quarter. There was a bit of excitement and a bit of silliness in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, but outside of that, there wasn't really a ton, was there? Like it was. Well, this was. Give me your overall thoughts on the game. We'll go through it kind of quarter by quarter afterwards. But like, what was your general feeling about it?
I would agree with your assessment there. I think if you were a neutral observer, this probably wasn't the most exciting game. It was a very defensive led game, but also a game that, even though the score was being kept quite close, so there was always the hope that it could turn into a more interesting game, that it always felt like Seattle had the number of the New England Patriots. Like Seattle on the defensive side were dominant. Like they were getting pressure consistently with their four defensive linemen, which is kind of what I said is kind of their base defense, and that was working quite well. And then they were mixing in enough like blitzes, strategic blitzes from the defensive backs, especially Devin Witherspoon, and those were being very effective as again. So May just looked, ineffective. He looked pressured, he looked harried, he sounds like he was a bit hurt as well. And until he basically started going a bit gonzo with the kind of being willing to use his legs a bit more, going with for the kind of deep, more risky passes, it was very much felt like, Seattle knew exactly what was going on there. And indeed, there's, some of the players were saying that they had tells for the offensive linemen and stuff like that. So they were bullying the offensive linemen at times just through sheer dominance. And they were also seemed to know what the offense was doing at the same time the offense did, which is obviously a major disadvantage overall. So just felt on that side of the ball, they knew what they're doing, and then you combine that with what was a very effective special teams unit. They were settling for field goals a lot, Seattle, but all of those looked pretty easy, even if they were all from relatively easy yardage. And then the punter Michael Dixon was consistently getting from his own side of the field, getting like 40, 50, 60 yards consistently with minimal return yards. Like the only return of any significance was one that got called back for a penalty. And he kind of cornered them.
He dropped three of his 7 punts within the 20, one of them within like the 5, wasn't it? Like it was just, it was
I think
very
2 of them
impressive.
ended up in the 5. And so, I think Seattle, this is kind of old school NFL, right? Like it's all about territory, it's all about defense with the championships, all that stuff. And it's a bit of an adjustment for people who maybe are more used to having a bit more excitement, or even watch, like, say, the NFC Championship game, which turned into a bit of a shootout there. So you'd say Seattle, on their offensive side, were very much, okay, we know the defense is doing this, so we don't need to do the NFC Championship game where we actually, quote-unquote, unleashed Sam Darnold. And basically they said, okay, let's not make mistakes. Now, there was a couple of things that, like, if a Patriot player had made a really great like catch on an interception that could have been there. They were opportunities there, but they were tough interceptions. But overall, Darnold did a very good job of just kind of like the pass rush was getting to him a little bit, and he had to sidestep a lot of rush and stuff like that, but he was just playing it relatively safe, not doing it. And then Ken Walker, kind of obviously the MVP, was, like he still has, as he always does, like those like negative plays occasionally, but he had enough plays where he just patiently waited for the situation to emerge in front of him. One cut, like one shimmy, and then he's gone for like 10, 15, 20 yards. And some of those runs were particularly impressive because they were like, cases where he got outside the edge and just kind of ran down the sideline early on and kind of got them out of trouble a couple of times. And while they weren't able to convert all of his production into touchdowns, he was obviously keeping the New England Patriots defense on the field, wearing them down a bit, making them more open for the play action play, for example, with the touchdown later on. And so it's just, it just felt like Seattle, if they had been forced to get into like third, fourth, fifth gear like they did in the NFC Championship game, I'm sure there were lots of other things they might have done on the offensive side, but it just felt like they were comfortable basically running the things that were working really well with the defense and special teams. It was a very defensive coach led like strategy, and then eventually that told, and they got the touchdown. They went up 19-0 up. At that point the game was basically over, outside of like May for a moment briefly feeling like that things might open up. We'll go through the chronologically get where
we will, yeah. Like kind of on a game wide basis, if we look at it, May kind of a little bit over 50% completion, just shy of 300 yards, which on paper looks good, but like a lot of this came late in the game.
I believe he only had like less than 50 yards in the first half. So that's probably like more indicative of what it was actually like.
Two touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and then, as you mentioned, took 6 sacks in this game. Took a lot of hits. I think it was 11 QB hits. Darnold on the other side, equally, like he was exactly 50% completion rate, 200 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Only took the 1 sack in the game. So you can see it was kind of a, let's not be the ones to make the mistakes, and let's not be the ones to turn this ball over. And then, like I said, he was able to run in his run game. Like it was almost a perfect 50-50 split between running and passing for Seattle. Obviously, they had the lead, they had more control over that, but on the other side, New England just weren't really able to get anything going. Like their lead rusher was Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson, and Trevion Henderson averaging 3.2, 3.3 yards a carry in this game. Like none of their running backs broke a run of over 9 yards. So like just nothing was really happening for them in that. And then obviously mistakes, like we said, May also had a fumble in this game that we will talk about those. And yeah, just overall, it was not the world's most impressive performance, but all credit to Seattle's defense for that. I think the thing that I thought was interesting was that, as you said, they did run a lot of this out of kind of, as you'd say, with their bases, that you kind of go, right, we're not going to, even though we're very successful when we blitz, albeit we don't blitz very often, like we're not going to start pulling that out here. We're going to keep with what we're trying to do throughout the season, and like this looked a lot more like other games they've had this season. Like the Rams games are different breeds. They seem to kind of they exploit the right areas of each other, and that forces them all to kind of kick up gears. Whereas like this felt like the kind of game that Seattle wanted to play all year. Like defensive, settle for field goals, because that was our main criticism for a lot of their games towards the tail end of the season, was like they're lacking the killer instinct. They're settling for a lot of field goals. Even in games they were winning by a distance, they were settling for field goals, but it's because they didn't need to go for the rest. They had the trust in the rest of the team.
Yeah, like their kicker is literally now has the overall, including postseason, most points ever for a player. I think they of Daniel Tomlinson. So yeah, but I think I think it is fair to say that Mike McDonald completely outcoached Josh McDaniels / Mike Vrabel. Like they look like a team that had spent the 2 weeks prepping and knowing everything and digging down, and Mike McDonald was say had things, and there's images put out in the press from afterwards of defensive players over McDonald's shoulders looking really intently, and it just looked like they looked like a team that understood the Patriots offense better than the Patriots themselves did, and then basically used that to completely cripple them early on. As you say, the 4-man pressure is really what worked as kind of the base during this game, but they did, especially early on. I think Harry, who last week was correct, they sprinkled in those kind of weirder things, kind of like the Witherspoon blitz and stuff, just enough early on to get them off their marks. And they also went completely against type, like I think people were talking about. For example, they did the opposite of what you'd expect by doing the pre-snap read. So, if you move the running back in and out, if the player follows them, it's man, and if they don't, it's zone. Like, that's the kind of tell. And Seattle deliberately did the opposite for most of the snaps they did it, and it just felt like Drake May had no idea what he was seeing out there, because there are screenshots of people doing analysis going okay, if Drake May was Tom Brady, he might have figured out, okay, there was actually a deep shot here, and there was a couple of things that maybe just kind of got away from him, but it just he was completely unprepared for this, and that has to a large extent, he's a second-year player, so you can't be too harsh on him, but and the offensive line wasn't helping him either, because they were allowing pressure fairly fast. But Josh McDaniels did not do enough here to help his quarterback, and he did not help even in the second half, just okay, this is what they're doing, let's adapt, let's change. They just never felt they ever got there, because even the touchdowns they got later on, or the one that really mattered, when it was still somewhat a close game, that was basically 2 moonshot deep passes to Mac Hollins,
and there's a few
Drake May scrambling, and those aren't things that are replicable. Well, the scrambling maybe, but they're not things you want to build.
And you saw it in the play calling at times. Particularly, there was times where he was taking shots that were clearly not on, just in the hopes of drawing flags and so on. And it was a fairly flag free performance overall. There's some criticism of it and some very happiness about it. I think there was a few spots where maybe the refs should have gotten involved, but overall, there was only 7 penalties in this entire game. It was decided on the field. The refs kept themselves out of it for the most part.
Yeah, but you have to expect that. That's how the playoffs are generally reffed. So I think that's fine. And I think it's just this is Mike McDonald, they were saying, the first Super Bowl winning coach who called the defense, was a defensive play caller, and yeah, he showed why he is special in that way. And maybe more defensive coaches will get a boost from this if they show that they have the equivalent of being the Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan of the offense, where they have that special sauce where they're not just friends with someone who knows how to run a good scheme. They can adapt, change, and dictate the terms of how NFL football is played,
Mm.
because Mike Macdonald has certainly done that
Yeah,
since he went to Seattle and
uh,
before.
and also just to note as well, like that New England, while it's one-sided, and like their defense did their job in this one as well, and you can say it's a reflection of
Yeah.
Seattle's offense or whatever. But like, Seattle only had 25% of their third downs converted in this game. No one went for a fourth down in this game. Like they were getting them off the field, or they were holding them to 3 points and so on. It just wasn't working. And outside of like most of the rest of this is very even on paper. It's just they weren't being able to convert it. So like they ran a similar amount of plays. They're within 4 yards of each other in total yards. They're within zero point 0.2 of a yard in yards per play. New England passed for more yards than them. You guys rushed for more yards than them. All that kind of stuff. But like it's the very specific ones that stand out. Like Sam Darnold was very good at stepping up in the pocket and avoiding pressure in this one. Drake May was not. So May took 6 sacks to the 1 sack that Darnold got. Obviously, we mentioned we had the fumble that was lost there. He also lost 2 interceptions, and those are your difference makers in it. Because like on paper, this is a close enough game. Just by the stats, it's just that New England just were not prepared to execute and just didn't really seem to have a plan. But let's start working through the game then and see how the game flow went. Because that's the other thing that I find interesting is that it's not like the score got to a point that game scripts went out the window, right? It wasn't that,
Yeah.
oh, now we have to start changing what we want to do. Like when you get to the end of the third quarter and it's a 12-point game, that's that's livable. Like you're not suddenly going, well, we have to change everything, but just
Like
nothing seemed to work up to that
it's a
point.
testament to how inert the dominance of the Seahawks was for this
Mm,
game, that people were going, oh, it's only 12-0 up, but you didn't really get the sense
never
in the
never
room
felt
or on social
close.
media that people were like, oh, but like there was basically one moment in this game, the first Drake May touchdown, where if hypothetically one was asleep, someone might have kicked you to tell you to wake up because things might be getting interesting, and that ended up dying off as
Someone
quickly
some,
as
someone might have done that, yeah.
yeah, hypothetically, but I think that was over as quickly as it started, basically, because
Yeah,
a few defensive plays came in from Seattle after that. So
so
yeah, it was it's one of those weird games where it's like, yeah, as I said, the scoreboard didn't necessarily match the level of dominance, but yeah, like there's definitely a world where that fourth quarter goes a few things in New England's favor, but it was a very, like I said, the paths of victory just felt very narrow even at that point.
so we'll kick off. The Seahawks are going to receive New England quite smartly, try to avoid any special teams silliness, and they go touchbacks. They're going to try and ensure you're not putting the ball into your returner's hands in this one. You've fairly solid looking initial drive, like decent run from Kenneth Walker, decent catch off AJ Barner. You get a deep ball into to Cup, but then kind of stall around that point and settle for the field goal up 3-0. You're relatively happy at that stage with that.
Yeah, so I think it was just fairly solid ball. Like Walker had one nice run. He'd be more important on subsequent drives, but certainly was good. And then Barner gets a nice throw across the middle, and then Cup gets a probably could have been, if reviewed, maybe decided to be not a catch. It depends whether you consider him to have caught the ball fully by the time his second foot went out of the field,
Yeah.
but they basically decided to rush to the line and run another play to get that through. I think that in some extent put off their rhythm, because obviously the first 15 plays are all scripted and all that. That was kind of thrown off because you just needed to get a run a play because you didn't want to get challenged.
Yeah.
And then that ended up being stuffed basically, and it just felt like, okay, whenever Seattle were behind the stakes, they weren't terrible, but they weren't like elite at it either. And
Yeah.
so that ended up being a situation where they ended up settling for a red zone field goal, which, not ideal and certainly not something you want to be living off. But, Seattle obviously had so much the rest of their squad is so good that they would get away with it. And it felt like from the start, they felt like that was okay to at least risk it.
Yeah. New England then get the ball out. They do return. They only come out to the 28. And then we see, I think, the most successful patch of plays. And obviously, look, as you said, start plays are scripted. They expect to see a bit more success here. But this is like a little string of a couple of plays together that are working, and people are going, oh, maybe we got something here. Like 6 yard run, 2 yard run, 7 yard pass, 8 yard pass, 4 yard run. And then you get your first defensive move, big sack by Hall, takes them back 10 yards. It's second and 20. They get an 11 yard run. They get pretty good with a scramble from May, and then an incompletion, and they have to punt the ball off. Like I think that kind of was 6 successful plays in a row, something along those lines. Like that's, I think, the best streak that they put together in this game, because then you kind of go back and forth with both defenses winning out. Seattle 3 plays, 4 yards, punt. New England 4 plays, 6 yards, punt. Seattle 6 plays, 10 yards, punt. And then that's the end of the first quarter. Then and we have another punt to start the second quarter. Like we kind of, it was two teams. Its defenses were definitely getting the better of the other side, both ways at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like this is obviously the kind of theme, as you say. The defense is certain. Like New England defense was certainly shouldn't lack pride for what they did. Like they certainly did their part of the job, mostly. And I think we know where the fault lies. I think in New England, like that first drive, that was kind of what we were talking about last week. If Drake May can act like Tom Brady while still sprinkling in the occasional scramble, which was why they had like at least a chance to make it on third down, because he scrambled, and he probably could have scrambled more, but then you go into, was he healthy or not, and how much were they willing to risk it. But basically, they were running the ball well. They were running the screen pass great, but even on those plays that were successful, so they had like a short conversion on a screen play, like the running back had to beat a defender one-on-one to get that conversion. And that's something that will work like maybe 50, 60, 70% of the time. But obviously, if you start, that's a hard way to live, basically, to have a consistent drive that's going to get you to the touchdown at the end of the day. And as we kind of said, like, if New England could show that they could do that, do it the hard way, the rest of their game plan may have opened up. Like, they might have had more deep opportunities to Keyshawn Boutte or whatever like that, or Stephon Diggs might have had more open coverage. But because they kind of showed a little bit on the first drive, but after that, it felt like increasingly they just didn't have anything consistent, that things just got worse and worse when they got along. And yeah, Seattle, I think Darnold's worst play was probably early on in this game, where he kind of was maybe throwing into windows that seemed a little bit tight. And I said, if a New England defensive back had made a really great play in the first half on a couple of these slightly more risky balls, maybe that's an interception and they could have lived off that. But like these would have been 10-20% type plays if they'd made them. And I think the MVP of the Patriots, certainly in the first half, was Christian Gonzalez. He was someone who was really making life difficult even early on, but especially in the second quarter, we get on second. But yeah, I think it's not that Seattle did have a couple of chances for big plays. I think in this one it was like Darnold got out of the pocket and could have thrown it up over the defense for a big play, but it never, none of those big shots ever came off in this game for either team, except for the New England touchdown that came on probably too late
to the fourth quarter.
But yeah, I think the big thing for the New England offense and the team was that even when they got going briefly, there would be a big negative play. There would be the sack on the first drive, or another sack from a Witherspoon blitz on their second drive, and that would basically kill any chance of their drive going any further.
Yeah.
And that's just the consistent theme you saw again and again until it was far too late. And so even though Seattle weren't getting, Seattle had their own series of negative plays, although they tended to be smaller, losses on TFLs or short sacks, they didn't look quite as completely put out when there was a win for the defense per se.
Yeah, and you've also got Drake May is 22, 23, he's super duper young. This is not an offense that has thrived on being able to consistently chip away. That's not who they've been. They've just been do nothing for 3 drives, have a big giant drive, do nothing for 3 drives, have a big giant drive, and that just wasn't happening in this one. We move into the second quarter and the punt fest continues. New England 3 plays, 5 yards and a punt, and we suddenly get a drive put together by the Seattle Seahawks. So we get our big massive Kenneth Walker run. He picks up 30 yards running off the left side. I think he came over the left end. Then it's kind of funny, incompleted pass because Christian Gonzalez has it covered, 30-yard run. Incomplete pass, Mike Williams in coverage, 29-yard run. Minus 2 yards run, incompletion, minus 2 yards run. I guess we just settled for a field goal. It's, I imagine, infuriating to watch.
Yeah, but as I said, if you're a Seattle fan, you're kind of used to it. There's certainly plenty of games that felt like that way. It felt that way this year. But as I said, because the offense felt like they were able to do things, that they were sticking to their plan, and it was going well enough that you didn't feel too concerned about it, say relative to how New England's offense seemed to be already falling apart at the seams, and
Yeah.
they were just like they were playing within themselves, New England, and eventually when they had to play outside themselves, that's when things broke. Where Seattle just seemed to be happy to do that, like I said, Seattle once again, like they missed a deep shot here, although more accurately Gonzalez, who I said had a really great game.
Oh, he was phenomenal this
basically
one.
tracked down Shaheed to stop a big play. But yeah, Walker, his running style, he kind of mixed in the kind of two styles of Walker run. One is like the complete bullshit run, where like he basically bounces out way outside, he bounces out and then somehow like tramps his way across the sideline for like 20-30 yards, and you're like the like Mike Rabel's basically pulling his hair out type look, or just like squinting, kind of going physical pain, like mental pain, kind of overwhelming him. And then the other one was kind of what I'd almost say was like the Le'Veon Bell style run, where he just sits there behind the line and then just waits for the defense to react to him, and the minute a hole opens up for him, he just like does a little deep cut and then he's gone for like 10-20 yards. And that was probably the more successful type one there. But because of those proclivities to maybe wait for things to happen or to bounce things outside, you get to the red zone, and then when the field tightens up, suddenly that turns into a tackle for a loss, and the I would say on balance, it's probably fair to say that the trade-off was worth it. But maybe there's situations like in the red zone where you might have seen more Zach Charbonnet if he was still healthy, especially because he's a more effective player in the kind of traditional running back pass game. But I think the positives of Walker certainly have been evident since Charbonnet went out or in the playoffs, and they more than outweigh the occasional trip up or TFL, and obviously that proved to be the true because he was MVP in this game. But yeah, it was an interesting game for the Seattle offense, but as I said, it also felt like because they trusted their defense and special teams units so much, they were just like, okay, New England proved to us that we should do more than this, basically, and they never had to, basically. So why not just run with Walker?
And then we go back to the joyous punt displays. You get a sack, I think, on the next drive. You get the Mills sack for 10 yards, and you have a 3-play negative 2-yard drive that results in a punt. Send it back over to Seattle, who equally they find a little bit of success in this one, but nothing consistent enough to be able to get there. You can see them starting to lean more entirely into the run a bit more in this one. They have 2 completed passes in it, but it's a lot of runs, a couple of incompletions, and then they decide they're a little bit too far out, which to be fair, they were, and they punt it back. And New England, given this lovely opportunity and what their defense have provided them, again, punt. This one had a false start on Will Campbell, who really just had a terrible day, and he was getting beat left, right, and center. And was then also, because your guys were able to beat him one-on-one, he started to jump a bit early. I think he ended up with 2 penalties for false starts in this game, but another punt from New England. Anything in that series kind of that you want to talk about before we get to your next score?
Yeah, like I think like the next drive from New England, they go 3 and out, and like it's not necessarily that's the most important play. Well, it was a sack, but it's definitely just kind of, it feels like the most indicative of how this game was going at this point. Like a rookie defensive tackle, Riley Mills, comes in and basically dog walks the offensive guard right into Drake May, and Drake May shows no spatial awareness to like move away from it, because obviously like they were still engaged together, so it's not like Riley Mills had a whole bunch of like lateral movement
to him,
but Drake May just stood there, and then he grabbed him, and then it was a sack, right? Like that's just like it just seemed to be indicative of how this offense just had fritzed out. It wasn't quite working, and like it's not like that was the only time a offensive lineman was dog walked by a Seattle defender during this game. And I said Will Campbell was also one of those players getting dog walked more often than he'd like, and it just felt like, again, like the offensive lineman coach Josh McDaniels just weren't doing anything to help these offensive linemen and Drake May succeed. They were just doing, this is how we run the offense. If you can't make it, you can't make it, and we'll just live with that. And obviously they ended up not living with that very well at all. And then Seattle, I think at this period, like I think they were trying a couple of things with Darnold, and Darnold was showing good composure under pressure. He was sidestepping pressure and doing his best, but I think you definitely saw that New England's defensive line, people like Milton Williams, were winning their one-on-ones, and Darnold was having to take throw the ball very late to Ken Walker, those type of situations. And so a drive that showed some promise for the attack I think fizzled out, and it kind of showed that wasn't the sustainable way, and therefore they would probably end up going, Ken Walker runs maybe are the business. We'd rather get our explosive plays that way than trying to force it with Darnold. And then like a coffin corner punt by Michael Dixon, who's kind of one of the unsung heroes of this game. And
Not
then
unsung by
Seattle,
us. Not
of course,
unsung by
Michael
us.
Dixon, Michael Big Dixon, of course. Like so Seattle. They have one final drive. Well, there's like technically a kneel down by the Patriots at the end of the half, but like Seattle, they work it again. They rely on Ken Walker to get the job done. They require on Cup to make a couple of conversions, and they get down to New England 23, and they go for with the seconds coming off the clock, and they had no timeouts. They go for one deep shot for the touchdown, but again Gonzalez, who again was by far the best New England player in this game, basically shuts down JSN. Could maybe have got a pick, but again, it's just none of these picks were like gimmies. They were just like, if an elite player like shows up and does something special, they get a pick, but wasn't to be, and Seattle get that final field goal and go into the halftime 9-0 up.
Yeah, no. So we get 9-0 up. It's, as you say, very much within shouting distance. It's not like they're a mile ahead, but it just feels relentless. It doesn't feel like New England have an answer to it. I remember we were talking quite a bit of like, well, what would you do at halftime? What would you do to swap? And we said a couple of times like, well, they need to look at running outside because they're not getting anything up the middle. They need to maybe just start getting May moving a bit because he's getting stuck in that pocket. Like you said, that sack he took with the guard being walked back into him, like he should have been backing up. He should have been aware that was coming. So maybe just get him moving. He's just getting caught up in the time. And as you mentioned there as well, there is some stuff that came out afterwards about him being injured going into the game. Now they come out to the media multiple times and said, I'm completely healthy, everything's fine, and he was a full participant in practice, but then was getting I believe he was got his throwing shoulder shot up full of painkillers in advance of going out onto the field, which is never the truest sign of a healthy man if you need to get that coming in. But as they left the field, we saw the emergence of sentient tall grasses. We saw fantastical costumes and pretty substantial like stage setup and an organization coming in for the Bad Bunny halftime show. So what did you make of Bad Bunny? Did you enjoy it? Obviously, he had just won his Grammy. He had pissed off Donald Trump. This was going to be his only American gig, I think, because he said he's not going to tour America at the moment because ICE would just raid all of his concerts. I thought it was good. I don't know a lot of his music. I'd gone out and listened to a few of listened to his most recent album, and I think one or two of the previous ones to try and know what I was in for coming into it. A lot of symbolism in the set designs and so on. What did you make of it?
I thought it was a good performance. I wouldn't say it's up there in the kind of elite set of performances, like if you go take an objective view of it, but I think it was certainly put on an interesting display, something rich in imagery and rich in songs that were good. Like obviously I said I'm not familiar with his oeuvre, but they seem to be pretty good, interesting songs. But sometimes a performance isn't for you, right? Like I don't speak Spanish. I'm obviously very, very white. Spoiler alert, if anyone's never met me in real life, I suppose. So, there's certain things here that aren't for me, but which you can still go, oh, that's kind of cool. But there's been other, halftime shows that would fall in the same camp where it's like, oh, that's not my type of music or that's not whatever. But I'm happy enough that it's interesting enough. And he put on a really good show, and it said the show had a lot of stuff going on, in a plantation, effectively kind of showing work in plantation and showing more contemporary culture, showing some things that referred to neglect from the US of Puerto Rico, like their electricity grid is a complete mess, and they basically had a bit in the middle where he was on electricity workers and stuff like that. So, and also showing off the more fun parts, like they shared a lot of the party culture, a lot of twerking and stuff like that. They did an actual wedding in the middle of the ceremony, because apparently they I assume they're friends, whatever like that, but they invited him to do their first song in their wedding, and instead he invited them to do their wedding at the Super Bowl. And that was I think it was really interesting and cool and stuff like that. And you saw Lady Gaga doing her kind of hit from last year or 2 years ago, whatever, Die With a Smile, in a kind of salsa type of tune. I think Ricky Martin sung some kind of anti-colonial Spanish tune as well. And there was cameos from people like Pedro Pascal. So, I think as a celebration of Latin culture, of Puerto Rico, and of his, obviously the success that he's had among such a huge fan base, this makes a lot of sense. And as far as I know, the viewing numbers were really, really high for this. So I think, like objectively, I may not have heard him, but plenty of the world has, and I think that's fine. And certainly, like, my reaction wouldn't be, this guy should speak English. Why isn't he speaking English? And like watch the Kid Rock alternative halftime show as some kind of like protest against this. So yeah, I think it annoyed all the right people, probably. But I think it was like, I wouldn't say it was an elite Super Bowl performance, but I think it was certainly impressive. Yeah.
Who's looking at Kid Rock and saying, yeah, that's what I need in my life?
Well, there might be a bit of culture war going on, and they only have so many people who are willing to like stamp themselves fully on the red side at the moment. Like, there's lots of ones who have conservative leanings but may not be willing to go full out, like, okay, I'm putting my side, especially given that the tide of popular opinion might be moving against that movement at the moment.
Yeah, no, of course. But no, like I said, look, I overall I enjoyed the halftime show. I think it wasn't the most memorable one for me, but that's because like for me that's he's not Kendrick. Put it that way. But no, it was good. It was enjoyable. Give us a break to kind of catch our breath, have a think about what was coming, and like, to be honest, looking at where the teams are at halftime, it's 9-0. It's 183 yards to 53 yards. Like it's not going. It's 10 first downs to 4 first downs. It's three sacks allowed versus no sacks allowed. It's all going in one direction. But hopefully now it'll turn around once we get into the second half, right? So we get the opening kick, or sorry, the opening kickoff of the second half. Seattle don't seem to be afraid about allowing New England to try and return. They're happy with their coverage, so they get a kickoff. It only goes 22 yards. Has the halftime talk work? Is it working? They take a deep shot to Mario Douglas. It doesn't work. They run it for 7 yards. Worked pretty okay. And then a short pass, incomplete, and they have to punt it away. So they come back out in the field for a refreshing additional punt. Just to be clear as well, our first half had 11 actual drives if we take out that like one play kneel down, of which 8 were punts. This was not fireworks, but the Seattle Seahawks are intent on fixing that for us, right, Ronan? We're gonna get our 4th score of the game, and this one they actually lean into the pass a little bit more.
Yeah, like a little bit, but it's still kind of built on the back of like Ken Walker being a central part. Like I think early on, you see a bit more work from the pass game. I think you show. I think this wasn't an elite game for Sam Darnold, but he didn't need to be. I don't think they asked him to be, but he was kind of moving that ball down the field. He found Rashid Shaheed, he found JSN, and I said he was avoiding the pressure, right? Like I think even though occasionally a New England defender was getting free, he just sidestep it, make the play, and not turn it into a negative play. And even when a play broke down, he went for a scramble for 11 yards, and then like kind of the big play at the end was a screen play to Ken Walker, where you kind of showed, like New England were like, oh crap, JSN is actually doing things, and basically he does some like basically makes some kind of noise on the left hand side, and that basically leaves Ken Walker to spill out into the right side, get a screen play, and go for 20 yards. But once again, they get to the red zone or near the red zone, and unfortunately they're not able to turn that into a touchdown. But they still, obviously now it's a 2-score game, and even though it's only 12 points in the context of what we've seen up to this point, 12 points starts to feel a lot larger than it might feel like if we're in like peak 2020 crazy football era. Like right now this feels like, okay, the Patriots need to start showing something, and I feel like the pressure was starting to build on Drake May especially. Okay, I need to start at least thinking about doing something rather than just sitting out there. But I think they were still patient maybe for the rest of this quarter, but by the end of the quarter, certainly when it was still 12-0, I think they were starting to go, okay, we actually have to do something, please.
The one bit I remember here is there was a timeout taken by Seattle. What was going on there? Was it just a bad look that he wanted to swap out of, or what caused that? Because it's very early on in a half to be using a timeout.
I assume that it was just a strategitic decision. It's just like, okay, we need to,
because it was
at this point they were in scoring position.
Yeah,
I think
it was going into 2nd and 9 after that really short 1 yard run.
Yeah, I imagine Clint Kubiak wasn't delighted that they hadn't scored a touchdown from like good field position yet. So maybe there was a choice made. Okay, like let's settle things down and let's try and actually turn one of these near red zone or red zone type opportunities into a touchdown. But like it's just it could be a communication issue. It's hard to know. So I'm sure that someone in one of the press conferences talked about why they did it, but it wasn't very high on the agenda. I imagine people were reviewing after this game.
No, not at all. The Pats get the ball back. Again, they take a return out, gets out to it, the 28-yard line. They have a very successful run. Trevion Henderson gets 9 yards. It's 2nd and 1. And yeah, this is like this, I think, more so than even like the sacks and so on. This is where the Seattle defense kind of absolutely earns the thing. It's 2nd and 1. You kind of just go like, yeah, look, they're going to get 1 yard and we'll just kind of slow them down and said, nope. They try and run Henderson up the middle, no gain. Thompson Lawrence in the stop, and then you've got an incompletion where they try and go for the deep ball off that, expecting that they weren't going to be expecting it. Unfortunately, there was just not a fantastic pass at it, and they have to punt it again. So that's their second play of the second half, their second 3 and out, even though they got a 9-yard rush to start that out. Like it was.
And I think like they had a 9-yard rush or an 8-yard rush on their first drive in the third quarter as well. And both these were Henderson rushes. And you kind of look at the Seattle offense where they were like, okay, Ken Walker, you're not going to get a big play every time, but you're at least going to get something explosive.
And that's the Henderson thing, isn't it? Henderson is he's not always going to break out. He's gonna miss holes. He's gonna take tackles for loss, but he's also gonna have 2 rushes that go over 20 yards or whatever. Like he's your more explosive option for certain.
Like, I think at this point, maybe you just have to accept, like, it's a 12-point game. You're not out of it by any stretch. You just have to accept, okay, we're not going to win this by being consistently beating this defense. That's just not going to happen. We need to take a few more risks. We need to put the running back in there, which, to be fair, they were doing in these first 2 drives. They were finally giving Henderson the ball a bit, but they never really stuck to it. And, like, that second run up the middle, like, fair enough. Like, you run up the middle, like, that's the correct thing to do on 2nd and short, but also it's like, okay, you're playing right into what the Seattle defense wants you to do, and they prove that they're a better team than you. Your offensive line is getting bullied right now, and those kind of 2nd and short certainly in recent years have been considered to be an optimal time to try the play action, but instead you wait to 3rd down when they're going to be at least more ready for something that's not just going to be run off the middle, especially after failing on 2nd down. It just felt like they were never willing to go all in on like, okay, no risk it, no biscuit type football, which I think, maybe could have led this game being out of reach even earlier. But I think at this point, that's when the pressure is ratcheting up and you need to show that you can do something, even just to get some confidence into this offense to feel like they're not getting bullied. Because this is also like I can only imagine how dispiriting it was to be Drake May or this offensive line for this game, because it just felt like, even when you did something, it would end in a negative play. It would end in something, and the idea of like where we had like you're asking us to march methodically down like 5 yard, like 5 yard by 5 yard, whatever type chunks against this defense. It just must have felt like nearly impossible.
Also, the other thing that I don't understand realistically is why all their deep shots are being designed to go to Demario Douglas at this stage, because like both of the deep shots that they have taken at this point are both at Douglas and like not at Booty, not even at Diggs or someone like that. It's just I'm sure it's probably something to do with what they were seeing in the matchups they were being given, but it was not working. So you get the ball back for the Seattle Seahawks, and this one doesn't go fantastically well. So take a sack to start it for a loss of 8 yards. So you're 2nd and 18. You get a 4-yard pass off to JSN. You get a 6-yard run up the middle to Kenneth Walker, and you're going to have to punt, and then you get a 10-yard penalty on the punt as well, right? 10-yard penalty on the punt. So it's just it's not great. But this is
another punt zone part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Both
so we go.
Seattle and,
I'm going to speed this bit up, and you can just tell me any bits that you want to talk about in this. So that's a 3-play 2-yard punt. New England get it back. 3-play 6-yard punt. Do they take any interesting shots in here? No, they don't. They don't even take a deep shot on this one. So 3-play 6 yards punt. Seattle get the ball back. 3-play 6 yards punt. You're trying to get the ball out a little bit more. You're trying cut, but again, Gonzalez has him well covered up. And then New England get the ball back and they fumble it. So they have a run up the middle for 3 yards. Drake May scramble for 5 yards, an incompletion. Then they have a short pass for 4 yards, and so they're kind of maybe starting to get a bit of momentum, maybe starting to get a bit of movement happening. Like they've gotten past their first down of this of this half, and Drake May gets sacked by Hall, fumbles the ball, and it's picked up by Byron Murphy, and he takes it to the New England 37-yard line. And yeah, you've just turned the ball over, something that they absolutely could not afford to do, and you've given the guys great field position. They're only 37 yards out from your end zone.
And I think like this part of the game is probably where, as a Seattle fan, or certain people that you listen to who are Seattle fans are like a little bit annoyed because they're like, we're dominating this game, but yeah, we're not really finishing off the game as we get into the second half of the third quarter. Both teams have, and it feels like, when a sack happens, Seattle, they're making a deliberate choice. We don't want to risk doing something stupid, so we'll keep it fairly safe and just accept we might have to punt. Whereas New England, just throughout this game, never felt like they had any, like, even if they wanted to, they couldn't get a first down after a negative play. I think like the New England's defense during this period was particularly impressive. On the back end, I thought some of the coverage was incredibly sticky. Like they were starting to dominate the wide receivers from Seattle as they were getting, especially in this worse field position. I think JSN also picked up an injury around this time as well. So, I think Seattle's pass offense looked quite neutered, and they seemed to, at least for momentarily, bottled up Ken Walker and kind of solved that problem. So
yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. Like when you look at,
he wouldn't have been happy with this, but at least he would have go, okay, we're keeping ourselves in this. There's still a chance, and then as you say, that fumble happens just near basically at the end of the third quarter, and that would end up being the pivotal turning point of this game as we enter the fourth.
You get a pass off to AJ Barner for 11 yards. You get a 1 yard run and an incompletion, and then you get a 9 yard pass to get you the fresh set of downs and a lovely little 16-yard touchdown pass. AJ Barner again, your tight end extraordinaire. Well, I still think they might be looking at an upgrade in tight end, but we'll see. That's for future discussions. But yeah, Sam Darnold gets his touchdown in the Super Bowl, his only one, and extra point is good, and all of a sudden it's 19-0.
Yeah, and I think like this is the big difference is that, right, like rather than just like missing out on the long conversion, they finally get a third and long conversion with the 3rd and 9 to cup, and that sets up extra downs, and they decide to go for the play action for Barner in the corner, which is kind of somewhat similar to a cup play that didn't work earlier on in the drive, a couple of plays before, but it just they obviously, I think at this point, even Seattle, like Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald, okay, let's kill this game. Like, let's not piss around anymore. Let's take a few more risks and let's try and kill this off. And they managed to get that really incredibly important score at this point. And it wasn't anything super impressive. It certainly doesn't stand out as something special that happened compared to many of the touchdowns I've for say JSN this year, but just very well played. And I think it's just at this point also the New England defense, like we're working so hard to expect him to, keep the Seattle Seahawks from scoring a touchdown after, 4 effectively red zone trips at this point. And this would be like maybe the 5th. Well, let's get this to the 5th. That's just asking a lot. Eventually, the other team is going to score, and eventually you're going to put yourself in a tough position. But then, to be fair, as I said, this was the point maybe hypothetically, the game's over and stuff like that. But if someone was hypothetically asleep, maybe the next thing that happens might wake them back up to at least watch the back end of this game briefly.
So New England, too, I've said their offense throughout the year has been kind of asleep for long periods and would wake up for 1 or 2 drives. So it woke up for one of those drives, all right. I think that the mistake was you kicked a touchback. So they took a touchback, started their own 35. Nice little 6-yard run here for May, scrambles out of bounds, and then they start hitting some deep passes. So he goes deep middle to Mac Hollins, picks up 24 yards on that one. They're into Seattle territory, 35 yards out. They go no huddle shotgun, and he just goes deep pass to Mac Hollins for 35 yards, touchdown. Extra point is good, 19-7. Have we got a game? There's certainly a chance we have a game. Now, this was the best that their offense looked for pretty much the entire game. Although they do string a couple of plays together on their later drive as well. But like, this was okay. We've spotted something. It seems to be working. Let's not give them a chance to reset. Let's not give them a chance to substitute if they want to. Let's just see if this works, and it worked.
I'm not even sure if they spotted something, because I just think this was like, there's a reason Drake May was for MVP voting. I think why people have been so excited for Drake May since he started playing, even in last year when he was playing at a really high level in a terrible team. Like he is a special talent, right? He is capable of making throws that other quarterbacks or many quarterbacks are not capable of doing. Like that first pass to Mac Hollins, that was like into a zone that felt like maybe like 1 meter squared, where Mac Hollins makes that, and then there was 4 other Seattle defensive backs. If he'd just been a little bit off, would have been an interception or PBU or something like that. So you saw like at this point maybe they were just like fuck it, like Drake May, just do it. Like, and he scrambled a bit more. He obviously scrambled to start this game, and I think scrambling maybe one of the few routes to victory for this offense. If they'd done that more, made that risk, maybe it's something that seemed to work at least a little bit better than some of the other stuff they were doing. But like that first shot to Mahollins, like that's an incredibly difficult thing to replicate. And it's not something you can build like consistent offense on. But obviously in a game that was still only 19-0 down, like that's still worse than it was like only a touchdown ago. But like that's the kind of thing that like Seattle fans would have been very worried about if this was still like 15-0 because they only settled for a field goal and it was like a 1-score game after this. I think like that, and then even the Mac Hollins touchdown drive, that was also good. It wasn't bad coverage from the Seattle defensive back. It was just a good play by Hollins great throws, and May. Yeah, so it's just one of those cases like you saw what May can do. He is a special talent, but similar to like the Bills, like you don't want to end up to being like a team that just leans on your special talent bailing you out all the time, and against a team that was so much more complete and obviously so much more patient, like Seattle, like that this wasn't enough. Like it didn't feel like, it felt like okay, maybe there's a shot because it's football, you never know. But we need it on the next drive, which will come quite quickly because Seattle, they got the ball back. They went basically 3 and out. Well, they kind of went out quite quickly as New England just basically crowded the line. They basically said, "Don't you dare run on us!" And obviously Seattle were unable to convert another deep ball here. Like those deep balls just didn't work out for either team outside of the touchdown we just talked about there. And then you're like, okay, New England have the ball back.
Before we get to there, you gotta say, look, it was an unsuccessful drive for you. Fucking hell of a punt, 55-yard punt, and it's down at the New England 4-yard line. Like that was a phenomenal punt. Your kicker did a good job there for you. But so
Michael Dixon was having an amazing game overall. Like he was kicking in such a way that preventing any run backs from a great punt returner, and also it's again those coffin kicks when he was given a reasonable field position to operate from. So truly impressive. But
so I think
the truly important play, it's 19-7, you got the ball back, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and this is the thing. This is when everyone starts to go, "Oh, we could have a game in our hands." They just did a 3-play, 65-yard touchdown drive. Their defense stopped them, and now they're getting the ball back. What can they do? And it starts out pretty well. They have an incomplete deep left pass. They're trying the deep stuff. It's not working fantastic, but they go short to Ramondre, who kind of gets it on a semi-screen, but it was a forward pass, and he goes 13 yards. Then they're gonna just keep trying this deep thing to see if it works. So they try to Mac Hollins again. No joy there. But then 4-yard pass, 16-yard run. 7-yard pass. They're starting to build up a head of steam. They're up to 40 yards gained here. They're not really getting stopped. They're not seeing the negative plays. Wait a second. Drake May goes for the deep middle pass intended for Williams, and Love hops up in front of it, intercepted, and brings it back to the New England 38-yard line. So what had looked so promising, they had scored, stopped them, gotten the ball back, and started to roll. Nope. A mistake, ball's back to theirs, and they've given it to pretty much the exact same position they did on the earlier the fumble where they allowed the touchdown to be scored. It's basically 30 yards out, and ball is back very much in Seattle's court.
Yeah, like there was a bit more improvisation in this one. Like obviously the scramble, which I said probably the best thing that May had going for long parts of this game. And they were getting some good things out of Stevenson, but then the deep ball, like Chris Collinsworth was literally gone, I got nothing.
Yeah,
because it was thrown to nowhere, and it was just like Julian Love was just like, yep, all right, that's the easiest interception I'll get most likely in my career, and then he has a good return afterwards, and it's just like,
and it's second and 3, like it's second and 3. What was he thinking? I don't know.
But I suppose when you're in, like you're finally feeling yourself, you're finally let's get going and stuff like that, you feel the pressure because it's still a 2-score game, and you put yourself in a position where you feel like you gotta force it. But I just feel like, I don't know what happened there. Like I'm sure people have broken down maybe what they thought was going on, but I think the reaction at the time for everyone was like, what the hell just happened? And then that just
it was
sunk this game like a stone for the rest of it. Like, technically there was more football that happened, but that feels like the moment where this game effectively ended.
And then the Seattle Seahawks are obviously going to just shut this down, close it out now. They've scored from this position beforehand. It starts off well, 14-yard run, nice big gain. 10-yard run, looking great, but slightly diminished returns. 2-yard run, 1-yard run. It's slowing down. 3-yard pass, and then you kind of go, right, well, I guess we are accepting another field goal. Brings it to 22-14. Does keep it a 2-score game, but it's ate a lot of clock as well. It took 3 minutes off the clock, those 6 plays, because there was a lot of runs in it, and they were trying to milk it at that point. And you go, right, you need to come back, you need to score quickly here, and it goes okay-ish to start. They get a decent kickoff. They're right to the 38-yard line. They take a bad sack then, which they can't do, but they make up some of the ground with a 6-yard pass. Then Drake May goes out to Hunter Henry, quite a short pass, who then turns it upfield for 16 yards. All of a sudden, 1st and 10 over the halfway line. Everything is looking great. Drake May goes for a short pass over the middle to Keyshawn Booty, and Nwosu hops in and intercepts it. And
this is like almost like a strip six.
Yeah.
It's technically not a sack, so I think that it basically,
well, this is the thing,
it was initially called a sack.
It was essentially he sacked the ball out of his hands. It's kind of what happened, but yeah.
But it's officially an interception. Because it's interception, it turned out to be sacked. So I think Seattle did end up equaling the Super Bowl record of 7, I believe, in this game. But yeah, basically, the pressure, like Seattle, I think at this point, we're like, okay, let's kill this game off. They got their pressure and turned it into a pick 6, and obviously great for Uchenna Nwosu, who's been a great player for Seattle this year. And like, if the game wasn't dead, then it's definitely dead now.
It definitely was.
You go to the Monty Python bit about, it's dead. It's like,
it
is deceased at this point. And like, look, like technically more football happens. There's a touchdown, like a 65-yard touchdown drive by New England, where they just basically were beating up on a prevent defense. It was the ultimate prevent type defense.
Yeah.
To be fair, like the touchdown, the shoestring catch was kind of nice. Like Drake May was literally holding his hand and his head, going, "Oh, I fucked it up. I could have got the scrambled myself or whatever." But Ramondre Stevenson picks it just off before it hits the ground.
Yeah, it was a great catch, and they get the two. They attempt the 2-pointer and all that kind of stuff, and it's.
I think there's some controversy. I don't didn't end up mattering, but I think they're supposed to. I think Dan Alex said they should have took the 2-point earlier on their earlier touchdown as well. But like, look, Seattle
doesn't matter. Look, it's 29-13. The Seahawks 3 plays and a punt, but there's only like a minute and a half,
2 minutes, no timeouts for
and that's all she wrote. They run out the string. They win by 16 points, which is a bigger margin than any of us had on it, because we kind of expected the Pats would do a little bit more. And like we said, like it's one of those things where you can see there's 2 or 3 moments in there where it could have very quickly turned into much more of a game, but just they couldn't get out of their own way.
That's the risk of what Seattle were doing, right? Like, you were dominating, but you were choosing to take the points.
Yeah.
Which, like, people are criticizing Sean Payton for not taking the points, whatever, in the AFC Championship game. But they do make that choice because they have that supreme confidence in their defense, in their special teams, that we don't need to force it. Like, they never felt like they respected the Patriots. They felt like a team that thoroughly outcoached, outknew, and were prepared to beat this team up. And basically they kind of went, we'll start doing things when you start doing things. And basically by the time New England started doing things, it was too late. And basically the things that got New England back into this game with that touchdown were probably also things that got them out of the game, because Drake May going for the speculative deep shots, Drake May scrambling the ball a bit more. But like those type of things, probably if they had tried to do that from the start, might have led to being injured, or might have led to more interceptions or turnovers. So like, I understand why New England did what they did, but it just felt dispiriting. I imagine if you're a Patriots fan watching this, I know we had Patriots fans there who certainly seemed to be in that type of mood. And then just the cavalcade of like of nonsense happening in the fourth quarter. On average, like Seattle then, something that had been evident before then, which was that Seattle were dominating, then up turning into something more actual, which is turnovers, touchdowns, that type of stuff. So, I think it's a fair reflection of where the game was. And, like there was a Walker touchdown at the end that was called back for a holding. That's probably would have been the more accurate representation of the end of this game than the Ramondre thing. But yeah, like as you say, Seattle then win the game. Mike McDonald walks like a boss through the Gatorade, and then basically my definitely neurotypical king, like looks up into the sky because he doesn't want to look at the cameras. An amazing job by Mike McDonald. I think he obviously has to take a huge amount of credit for this. Clint Kubiak's now gone off to the Vegas Raiders. We'll see how the offense looks next year, but McDonald has shown that a truly elite defensive mind in the current NFL can be the difference maker. In 2 years, he has turned out a team that was stagnant for 4 or 5 years into a Super Bowl champion thanks to his skills. And we are now in an era of NFL football where coaches, it's no longer about being a leader of men or a CEO. I think you have to be an elite tactician. The only difference now is that if you're an elite defensive tactician, the door is now open for you to prove that and to make that something that is your super skill that could get a team over the top. The only problem is it's always going to be tougher because, as I say, if you have an OC who's any good, you'll probably get taken off you, and it's much easier to get a good to very good DC and keep them for a while than it is to keep a good or very good OC. So it is probably still favourable to get the offensive guys, but I think Mike McDonald has maybe shown that him and maybe guys who got jobs in this job cycle like Jesse Minter to Baltimore, these guys could end up, picking up a few Super Bowls. And that almost goes back, like he wasn't officially the play caller, but almost like the last time this was true, probably Bill Belichick and his era of dominance, like the defense being the base on which Super Bowl Champions was built. And it's interesting to kind of see it do that type of stuff.
And this game obviously had wider reaching elements as well. We saw Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah get fired. He was the GM of the Vikings. I'm half joking, I'm half not, because it is notable that he wasn't fired at the point that everyone fired their GMs. He was fired 3 or 4 weeks later when the quarterback that he let go in the offseason and Sam Darnold got to the Super Bowl. It's a testament to what the Seahawks have been able to get out of the players that they had there, but also a testament to some of the assessment, maybe, I think, or misevaluation that some of these teams had around their players. You had defensive players saying, "Oh, I'm just so glad to get out of Dallas. I knew I was never going to win a title there." You've got a quarterback who won 14 games last year for a team who decided to kick him to the curb and now don't have an answer and are probably turning up the temperature underneath their coaching staff's arses. I
think that the analysis I saw might be that the best owner is a dead owner, because obviously this is a team that's been currently run by Jody Allen, who's the brother of Paul Allen,
and it's nice for the valuation, given that they are apparently looking at potentially selling.
But you see the bad teams, like the teams like the Jets, who obviously got Sam Darnold back in the day. Like Minnesota aren't a bad team, relatively speaking, in terms of their ownership, relatively speaking. But like the Jets, owned by Woody Johnson, absolute shit show. Jody Allen's she's obviously a steward for the team, not the owner of the team in reality, and she's basically going to be forced to sell the team for legal reasons. I think basically the way the will is set up, or how NFL owners want there to be real owners, basically something like that. Anyway, someone's going to buy Seattle Seahawks probably in the offseason for a whole bunch of money, like always, but being the Super Bowl champion probably won't hurt their valuation. But they basically hire football guys to run the football operation. And John Schneider, obviously, people were talking about, he's the first GM ever to make Super Bowl with 2 completely different rosters. The roster has no shared components with the last time they were in the Super Bowl. And that is a very impressive achievement. I think Schneider, has always seemed to be good, but I think he was always with Carroll to be a shared burden for the personnel. They were equally powerful in that sense. Schneider, over the last few years, had more power. And obviously since McDonald came in, he's kind of run that side for him. And you kind of see that, okay, this guy still actually is pretty good at this, and maybe should have been trusted more. And there was a lot of picks over the years that felt like Carroll picks. Some of them worked out, like guys like Devin Witherspoon were pretty good, but who am I thinking of? Reek Willen. Reek Willen's a very Pete Carroll type guy, and that works out, but there weren't it wasn't consistent hits, right? It was just kind of inconsistent. And I think Schneider's kind of shown, okay, the most important thing is let's not go off script in the first round. Let's just pick the guy that everyone knows is good, even if it's at an unsexy position like defensive tackle or interior offensive lineman. And let's just build it that way. And that's just worked really well across that, rather than trying to fit things into your pre-existing notions. And yeah, fair play at the Schneider. And yeah, I suppose, as you say, Darnold, so many doubters. Obviously, we made so much fun of him when he's a Jets quarterback with the the mono and the seeing ghosts and stuff like that. He worked his way back the hard way. He obviously spent time on the bench with guys like Kyle Shanahan and stuff like that. Worked his way to getting an opportunity with Minnesota and blew up, did really well for them. And they decided, actually, you know, we don't want you. We want to go with JJ9, and he goes to somewhere else. And suddenly he's a Super Bowl champion. I think he seems like a guy that everyone loves. Seems to be very humble, has obviously learned things the hard way, and I think no one can be sad that he got this opportunity. And I think even Jets fans have talked about, like, you know, good for him. Like, basically, we know he wasn't the problem. Even I think a lot of Jets fans are like, he wasn't the problem even when back then they knew that, but they see it vindicated by the fact that if you just leave the Jets, things work out better for you.
I will say that blow is probably somewhat softened by the fact that he is essentially doing the Jets a service, because he did stop their division rivals, the Patriots, from winning a Super Bowl, and also is now the reason that they are the losingest franchise in the Super Bowl. So the New England Patriots, following this loss, have lost the most amount of Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of joked about last week, lots of ghost busting going on here. Darnold with the comment about ghosts, Seattle exercising the ghosts of Super Bowl 49. So, you know, and obviously they went through, to get to this point, they had to beat up their division rivals twice in the back end of the season. So certainly in terms of narrative, you know, wrapping everything up in a nice bow, Seattle have done that here in the most way. It might have been the most fun for everyone else to watch, but as a Seattle fan, very comforting, very appealing, and a good end to the story for 2025.
And on that lovely note, then, I suppose you gonna run it back?
I think it'll be tough. Like, I think a lot of things had to go right, and they're obviously, Sean McVay's not going away, Kyle Shanahan's not going away. We'll see if Mike LaFleur can make anything happen for the Cardinals. So I think the right back is incredibly tough. They were very lucky with injuries this year, but I think they'll certainly be competitive and in the running. Whether they can do all this again, that's a much tougher thing to do. But, you know, I'd certainly give them a shot. But I don't think this is a situation like where, you know, the middle of the Chiefs or Patriots type dynasties where you're going, oh, this team is designed to, like, dominate for a while. It doesn't feel like that, because the competition in the division and the conference is so strong, and because this team is more built as a complete unit. And, you know, the problem with those type of teams compared to, like, the franchise teams where the quarterback is kind of dragging everything up is that you're going to lose guys this offseason, right? There's just no way around that. So there's always going to be some attrition, and kind of keep that up is going to be difficult unless you kind of draft really well and keep getting lucky in free agency. So give them a shot, but it certainly doesn't. This feels much less like a dynasty than the Legion of Boom Seahawks, because that felt like a young team that was reaching an inflection point. If they had won that second Super Bowl, and that could have kept going for whom knows a couple more years at that point. This feels more like it's a really well-rounded, well-put-together team with a nice mix of veterans and younger players. So they're not going to fall off or anything like that, but it doesn't feel like that kind of ascending, like, meteorite that's going to start taking out the rest of the league in, like, leaps and bounds for the rest of the decade or something.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good team. You've got a lot of youth on it. It's nice to see so much of it being homegrown as well. That, like, I was just looking at, was the first two rounds over the last couple of drafts have kind of provided massive numbers of contributors and so on. So it's you know, I'd say the future is bright, but yeah, I think it's a tough job to repeat full stop, let alone given, you know, the division you're in and so on. So very good. Well, I suppose that
a far more interesting question is whether you guys will be back. But we have an entire off season to ponder what moves may or may not be made to try and get you back there.
We'll store that for the
somehow the Chiefs have returned.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But I suppose that'll wrap us up for this season of the NFL. We're going to be off for a little bit now anyway, and then we'll be looking at coming back for preseason previews, draft stuff and all that. So we'll have a look at that closer to the time. For now, I suppose, any plans for the next couple of weeks?
No, it's nothing too exciting planned at the moment, but yeah, just wallow in this a little bit, and hopefully as things get warmer here, can maybe start making some more exciting plans than that.
Very good. Yeah, I've got a week off work now coming up, so I'm going down to Wicklow to relax in a cottage and recharge. So looking forward to that. But I suppose until we chat to the next time, it's bye from myself. It's bye from Owen. It's been all 4 quarters. Thanks for listening. We'll chat to you in a bit.